some crimes are so twisted, so unthinkable, that even the people who investigate murders for a living struggle to find words to describe them. This is not a robbery gone wrong. It's not a drug deal turned deadly. This is something darker. Something that involves a word we usually hear only in horror movies: exorcism. In 2008, in the small town of Tatum, Texas, 13-month-old Amora Carson lost her life in a way that stunned not only her community, but the entire nation. The people responsible: her own mother and her mother's boyfriend, Blaine Keith Milam. And after nearly 17 years of appeals, delays, and legal battles, Blaine Milam's story ended on September 25th, 2025, when Texas carried out his execution. Welcome to True Crime Briefing, and this is the full story of the Blaine Milam case. If at any time you don't feel like to continue watching this particular case, please feel free to check out my other captivating true crime cases. I will understand perfectly. Amora Carson was born in late 2007. She was only 13 months old when her life was cut short. Family described her as a sweet baby girl with bright eyes and a smile that could light up a room. She had just begun to toddle around, learning her first words and exploring the world like every curious child. Her mother, Jessica Carson, was just 18 years old in 2008. She had given birth to Amora at 17 after becoming pregnant as a teenager. By the time Amora was barely a year old, Jessica was already living with a boyfriend, 18-year-old Blaine Keith Milam. Blaine's background was troubling. At just 18, he was already a registered sex offender with a prior conviction for indecent assault involving underage victims. He had already served time for that offense, and his presence in Jessica's life raised concerns for some family members. Together, Blaine and Jessica were living in a mobile home just outside of Tatum, Texas. Life there was unstable, and before long, their names would be tied forever to one of the most horrific crimes in Texas history. On the morning of December 2nd, 2008, Blaine and Jessica called 911. Their story was strange from the beginning. They told dispatchers that they had gone to a pawn shop, and when they returned, found Amora unresponsive. Police rushed to the mobile home, only to discover Amora's lifeless body. She was clearly deceased, already in full rigor mortis, something that takes hours to set in. The story about a quick trip to the pawn shop fell apart immediately. The crime scene left officers shaken. It was clear that this baby had endured unimaginable suffering. The medical examiner's report was devastating. Bite marks covered her body, from head to toe. She had 18 fractured ribs, a lacerated liver, and other internal injuries. Fractures on the back of her head, consistent with blunt force trauma. A broken arm and leg, evidence of strangulation, with a torn blood vessel in her neck, and perhaps most disturbing of all, signs of indecent mutilation. The autopsy revealed that Amora had been tortured for at least 30 hours. This was not an accident. It was not a momentary loss of control. It was prolonged, systematic abuse. Investigators pieced together what really happened. Surveillance cameras confirmed that Blaine had indeed gone to a pawn shop that morning, trying to sell tools. Detectives believed he and Jessica were attempting to raise money to run, knowing Amora was already dead. When that plan failed, they returned home and called 911. Under questioning, Blaine cracked. He admitted what had happened. He claimed that Amora had been possessed by demons and that he had been performing an exorcism. He even admitted to using a claw hammer during the ordeal. Jessica confessed too, though she downplayed her role. She said she was inside the home, watching while Blaine carried out the so-called exorcism. It was clear. Both were involved. Both had failed to protect an innocent child, and both would face the full force of the law. Blaine Milam's trial began in 2010 in Rusk County, Texas. The evidence was overwhelming. Experts presented the autopsy findings in graphic detail. Investigators testified about the false pawnshop story, the 911 call, and Milam's confession. The prosecution argued that Blaine's actions were deliberate, cruel, and calculated. They painted a picture of a young man who believed, or claimed to believe, that beating a child could cast out demons. The defense tried to shift blame, suggesting that Jessica was more responsible and raising questions about Blaine's mental capacity. But it was not enough. In May 2010, a jury convicted Blaine Milam of capital murder. The same jury sentenced him to death. Jessica faced her own trial in 2011. Jurors concluded that, as Amora's mother, she had not only allowed, but actively participated in the torture. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. She is currently housed at the Crane Unit in Gatesville, Texas. For Blaine Milam, the road to execution would not be immediate. His case wound its way through years of appeals. In 2019, his first execution date was blocked. The appeal focused on the bite mark evidence, which experts increasingly considered unreliable. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals granted a stay, ordering a closer look at whether this flawed science had unfairly influenced the jury. In 2021, another execution date was set. But again, it was halted. This time, the court ruled that Texas had not disclosed enough details about the execution drugs. The defense had the right to know the specific substances, their ingredients, their source, and other details. Without that transparency, the execution could not move forward. Despite these temporary victories, Milam's appeals ultimately failed. Courts agreed that while some forensic testimony was questionable, the other evidence of guilt was overwhelming. The confession, the injuries, the pawnshop footage, the timeline. By June 2025, the state set yet another date, September 25th, 2025. And this time, no higher court intervened. If on September 25th, 2025, the Texas governor fails to intervene and halt the execution, after 17 years of appeals and legal battles, the end had come. His final hours were quiet. He was given the chance to speak with a spiritual advisor and to place phone calls to relatives. Witnesses reported that he appeared subdued, resigned to his fate. Unlike some condemned inmates, Milam did not request a lavish final meal. Records show he received a standard prison tray. At 6 p.m., witnesses entered the chamber. Blaine Milam was strapped to the gurney, IV lines inserted into his arms. When asked for final words, he offered a brief statement, expressing regret and asking for forgiveness. At 6:12 p.m., the lethal dose of pentobarbital began to flow. Within minutes, Milam was unconscious. At 6:18 p.m., he was pronounced dead. Outside, A small crowd gathered. Some protested against the death penalty. Others came to stand in quiet memory of Amora Carson, the baby girl whose life was stolen in such a horrific way. The case of Blaine Milam is one of the darkest chapters in Texas's criminal history. A child, just 13 months old, was subjected to 30 hours of torment in the name of a twisted belief. Her mother, Jessica, will spend the rest of her life in prison. Her mother's boyfriend, Blaine Milam, faced the ultimate penalty, executed by the state in 2025. But beyond the trials and legal battles, this story is about Amora, a little girl whose life barely began, whose smile was silenced forever. What do you think? Did justice truly prevail? Should Blaine Milam have been spared because of flawed forensic evidence? Or did the brutality of his crime outweigh those concerns? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this story important, please support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and turning on notifications so you don't miss the next case. Until next time, thank you for watching.